We good?
Yep.
All right, welcome to the school building committee. Call the meeting to order. The public can access this meeting via WebEx technology. The meeting number is 2330-460-5181, and the password is Burlington with a capital B. I'm just gonna take attendance, and you have the slides. Is Christine gonna go ahead? Go ahead.
So just the next topic was the previous minutes for approval from April 13th, 2023.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Oh,
I wasn't there,
sorry.
sorry,
Okay.
I wasn't there, so.
Can I have that list back, Bob? Just real quick so I can see who's on the,
Just,
See that?
yes.
if I can't read it, I can turn it. Said I said, good eyesight. Somebody else comes, just squeeze back in.
All right, so let's see. Mrs. Bond, we're just voting for the minutes. We're motion by Jen, seconded by Dr. Conti. So, Mrs. Bond,
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco,
Aye.
Ms. Simon. Mr. Brooks.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. Dr. Conti,
Aye.
Ms. Kasha,
Aye.
Mr. Kiuna,
Aye.
Mr. Sagarino,
Yes.
Mr. Denizio,
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt,
Aye.
right, yeah, Mr. Villano,
I'll abstain.
Mrs. Priest,
Aye.
and I'm an I, so we have 10-03.
Okay. Next we have public comments. Are there anyone on call for public comment?
Oh, sorry. I didn't know there was anyone back. Yeah, you, come right here, yeah.
All right.
Hi, my name is Dave Wadilla. I'm a longtime resident of Burlington. I'm also a precinct 1 town meeting member and live on Barnum Road. I wanted to take a minute at this meeting to say how thankful I am for the Burlington schools. They are one of the most desirable aspects of our town. Over the years, there's been a lot of effort and energy spent on the schools to make them what they are today. I'd also like to say that one of the greatest features of our school system are the neighborhood elementary schools. This is one of the primary reasons I bought my house in Burlington, and I'm sure it's helped many young families along the way make similar decisions. And this is what has got me out of my house today in this rainy night and to this meeting to talk to you guys about. The thought of changing this neighborhood school concept and busing our youngest students across town to a mega school complex is disconcerting to me. I understand that you have many issues to consider with all of these decisions, with no perfect solution. But I would think that the imperfections of 4 neighborhood schools are far less than any mega complex school system. I'd like to urge you to discount this mega school option and focus on the benefits of the 4-school neighborhood concept that has served Burlington so well for so long. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to think you didn't even do it, you did it live. You came all the way down.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's important to me and it's important to a lot of people in town. And I know that there's a lot of decisions, right? You're forced to consider a lot of options, but you know, the four-school system has really benefited the town, okay? And to change that significantly, I think would be a major mistake. So that's what got me out of my chair.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
I don't see any hands on the phone.
We can move on to our next topic, which is our financial update. So we have some invoices for review and for approval this evening. The first being Danisco invoice number 3 in the amount of $29,545. Danisco invoice includes the environmental assessment in the amount of $2,860. And then also the invoice for wetlands environmental services in the amount of $4,496.25. As well as for the traffic study in the amount of $8,005.25. In addition to Danisco's invoices for this evening, we also have Doran Whittier's invoice number 7 in the amount of $13,972.50.
Christina, are these separate votes, or can we do one for Danisco and one for Doran Whittier?
You can do one for Danisco and one for Doran Whittier.
Okay, seeing that, then I would move that we approve the Danisco invoice number 3 at $29,545.
Second,
Wait, we didn't want all of the Danisco invoices together?
3, 4.
Yeah,
Four total? I thought you said, were they, with the way that you read them, it made it seem like that was the total, or are these all separate invoices?
they're all part of their invoice number 3, but they include also the environmental assessment, the wetlands environmental services, and the traffic study. So they're separate amounts from the $29,545.
Okay, yeah, but 29,545 is the total, correct?
I don't, let me just,
We can double check.
yeah, let me just pull up the invoice in front of me. I apologize. Kaden, can you pull up that invoice and just, I'm sorry, I know that it had come through this morning. Just let me know what the invoice looks like.
Yeah, 1 second.
Thank you.
But I believe that they are separate though. The 29,000 is own, and then 2,000, 4,000, 8,000 are separate from it's not a combined into the 29,000.
All right,
Okay.
then I'll amend my motion that we approve Danisco invoice number 3. That includes $29,545. In addition, an environmental assessment for the amount of $2,860. A wetlands environmental services for $4,496.25. And a traffic for the amount of $8,005.25.
Accept that amendment and second it. That's what that needs to be worded.
Good. Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Kasha?
Aye.
Mr. Cuna?
Aye.
Mr. Sagarino?
Yes.
Mr. Genizio?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt?
Yes.
Mr. Valano?
Yes.
Ms. Priest?
Aye.
I'm an aye. In 13. Yeah, 13-0.
And I move that we approve the Doran Whittier invoice number 7 in the amount of $13,972.50.
Second.
Mrs. Bond?
Yes.
Ms. Monaco?
Aye.
Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Brooks?
Aye.
Dr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Kasha?
Aye.
Mr. Cuna?
Aye.
Mr. Sagarino?
Yes.
Mr. Denizio,
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt,
Yes.
Mr. Valano,
Yes.
Ms. Priest,
Aye.
and I'm I, another 13-0.
Okay, great. The next slide is just our budget breakdown of our project dashboard that just shows the 4 different buckets of money for feasibility and schematic design, as far as the original budget number, the contract amount, and what's been expended to date. And so this will be updated following tonight's approval of those invoices for Danisco and our invoice number 7. So at our next meeting, we'll provide an additional budget breakdown that includes tonight's invoices from approval. Next, we have our design update. And I'm going to turn it over to Donna.
Me, I guess. Good evening, everyone. Just to give everyone a brief update, what we've been doing, where we are with the process. We're still doing a lot of fact-finding investigations. But what we wanted to first talk about really is understanding that this is with our partner, the MSBA. And with that, we really have a pretty prescriptive flow of how we have to review, process, analyze, and arrive at a solution. So with that, I'll just jump right into it. I think everyone may have seen this in the past, but I just think it's important to reiterate where this is a really important first stage of the process, and it's called the PDP, or Preliminary Design Program, where we really focus on the educational program, which will then inform the space summary, which is the overall square footage, the number of spaces, and the overall square footage of the building. Understanding the existing conditions, which we'll give you a quick update in a little bit. And then establishing the design parameters for your new school, and then developing and evaluating alternatives. We don't need, I just think it's really important right now. We do not need to make any decisions at this point in the project. I'm sure a lot of us will come to a quick solution, a solution that renovation doesn't work. I mean, that's why we're all here. But other than that, we're not asking anyone to make any decisions at this point of the study. So we just want to understand the educational program, the spaces needed, which will inform the options as we start laying them out to present to MSBA for their review. And so they have an understanding of what we're thinking about conceptually for the project. So I just want to just make sure everyone knows we're not looking to rush to judgment on any decision right now. With that, and we just felt this was important. Why do I sit here every time? You're fine, you're fine. I just, so what we wanted to do is just quickly show you how we are, where we are with the enrollment with MSBA. Oh, I'm like, where's everyone?
You can see
Checking me.
the camera's straight ahead.
Oh, straight. Okay, so then I'm okay.
Okay.
So just for everyone's benefit on how we arrived at where we are today with the enrollment, what we're showing is this is the historic information of your enrollment through today or through this year. And then working with MSBA, they came up with and arrived at an agreement with Burlington that the forecast through 2032 is a slight decline of total student population grades, only K through 5 for 1,590. They ended up rounding down 1,590 students. And then to arrive at the capacity of each school, they wanted to make sure that all of your schools can support the population that is anticipated or projected. So with the support of Burlington Public Schools, what they did was they identified the number of current classrooms in each school at 18 students per classroom. So it's really important. They support your low class size, which is wonderful. And that kind of gives you the capacity of each school. So for capacity need at Fox Hill only, you'll see that total capacity, with the exception of Fox Hill, you have 1,260 students or seats for your students. And then you take the 1,590 students for your projected enrollment, and that will tell you what they've determined what the need is for the Fox Hill only school. So that's how we arrived at the 325 student enrollment for Fox Hill only. So it really, when you take that divided by 18 students per classroom, you end up with an 18 classroom school, general classroom only, which is 3 classrooms per grade. And then what you'll see is, you know, kind of rounding the numbers, but 3 classrooms per grade. So it's not much different than what you have, but it's what it will do is allow you the additional support spaces that you desperately need in your school. And then when you go to the next slide, they take the same enrollment and then they say, okay, well, if Pine Glen also comes offline, if we just look at the space capacity at Memorial Wyman, you have current capacity of 954 students, and you subtract that from your projected enrollment, showing that you need a school for about 640 students. So you take the 640 students divided by 18 students per classroom, and you end up with the 36 classroom school. So I just think it was just wanted to make sure, because I think we were hearing different things, and I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear that it makes sense. They are taking into consideration 18 students per classroom, which is really important, and that it's a slight reduction from where you are today. And I believe you even had a 40 student decrease in enrollment in just 1 year. So they're not saying that your enrollment as of 2028 is actually a little bit less than what is projected over 10 years, but they're saying we're going to give you the average. So that's important because they don't want you to be over capacity on the day that you open. So I think we vetted this out pretty well. School department felt comfortable with it. I think we all feel much better about it. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that we're taking into consideration the capacities of the other schools to arrive at this enrollment. So,
Donna, can I just add something to
Yes.
that too? So when we first were asked to enter into the MSBA process, they only accepted us into that process given the scenario with the combined Pine Glen. So they only accepted us into that process with a 3 elementary school option. School committee at that time wanted to make sure there was a 4 school option. So we actually petitioned the MSBA. So the 325 student option that was presented first wasn't even initially offered to Burlington. And we had to ask the MSBA to make that an option for us. So again, it wasn't the reverse order. We didn't have 4 and we created the 3. The 3 was what the invitation was based on. And we've asked for the 4. So I think that order is important.
Yeah.
Because people think there's sort of some set decision been made. And again, we petitioned to have the 4 school option because of the school committee asked us to ask the MSBA to consider the option, the 4 school option and the class size of 18, because initially they were only going to accept a class size of 23 and a combined school option. So they really did, from their perspective, compromise and move towards where the committee felt it was important to, again, accept a lower class size and to have additional options for this group to consider.
So with that, MSBA will, whatever your solution is, whether it's 325 or 640, there's no need to go back, right? They will accept whatever your preferred solution is on 325 or 640. We have districts that sometimes say, oh no, we're going to have to go back through this whole thing and defend why we picked 325 or 640. Nope, they're in agreement. You just tell us what your preferred solution is. So really, it is now a local decision on what you feel is the best solution for Burlington.
And Donna, just,
Yeah, keep going.
it's not a range. It's not 325 to 640. It's 325 or
Right.
640. So you can't say I'm more comfortable with 500. The MSBA said, well, it's either or.
Correct. Sorry if I wasn't clear.
No, I just want to make sure we're extra
Yeah,
clear
yeah.
on that.
Are we concerned anyway about like COVID affecting the numbers from the historical point of view?
In terms of the MSBA projections, I can't,
I know they're not.
I don't know that. I would say, given to how the projections were done sort of historically or formally, the MSBA projections have been, they spend a lot more time on the projections. I think overbuilding is a real concern, has been of the MSBA from their inception. And I think that they are, their projections are relatively accurate. I haven't been a part of prior building projects, but again, John, you've been through their enrollment projections. Were they,
Many times.
and how have their projections been?
Well, I think it was varied in Winchester. We saw that if you build it, they will come effect that we feared, and opened a school with 2 portables on it that still have portables today. The second time we were able to massage the enrollment similar to, that's a big win, getting the MSBA to agree to 18 per student. They don't do that a lot. Having been in there many times fighting for it. So that's another big win that the system's already gotten. But Harold Wyman, we opened right on size, and Warren, you were there, and Vincent Owen, same thing. So once we got them to come down into the 20 range, it was a lot more manageable. It still was above what the average class sizes had been at the time, but knowing that there was going to be some redistricting and moving some folks around. So on both sides of it, I've been there when we opened neighborhood school with 2 portables, and that, I think that helped with the MSBA. They did it a lot. That happened a lot to them. So they were able to come down from their hard line of 25 to 23, then to 20, and now 18.
Yeah, or they'll accept whatever your district is comfortable with, yeah. No. I think the other part of that is their worst fear, is that you're gonna open and you're gonna be over capacity the day you open. So they've also not looked at the year that you're supposed to open. They take the average over 10 years, which also provides a little bit of buffer. So and all of our districts have not seen an over capacity on when you open. But and they're pretty thorough about their enrollment. So we feel very comfortable with what they state and tried and true.
Yeah, you had mentioned at one point that also that about 10 years ago, the MSBA reorganized and they use a whole different process. So this example you have where they opened with 2 portables, our example, which I'm very concerned was, been very concerned about, we opened Memorial, that it was already a capacity. I think we had a redistrict that year. I wasn't yet on the school committee. So, but what you're saying is they use different procedures now than they did for those 2 examples that we have. The rest of the examples seem to be much more on target. I'm a bit reassured compared to when we began this discussion a couple of years ago. And I just wanted to share that because I think it makes a big difference, because you gave 2 examples. One, they opened, with not enough room, and we have Memorial, we opened without enough room, but that was 10 years ago. And you expressed to me that in the time since the new organization has been working on it, you've not seen that.
Right, and just a little back, do you know what year the?
Ambrose was 08, 09.
Okay,
No one
it was when it was open.
Yeah.
So it was pre-MSBA, right? So just to Martha's point, the program used to be called the SBA, School Building. There was an authority, SB Assistance, thank you. School Building Assistance, and they depended on the districts. It was under the Department of Ed, and it was really just a funding mechanism. They gave like 150 square feet per student. They asked the districts to provide the enrollment, which a lot of them were just provided by NESDEC, right? So it was a pretty simple, straightforward, not, a lot of it was driven by what the information was provided by the districts, and a lot of the times districts really depended on NESDEC or some other agencies like that just to come up with some enrollment. But in 2004, there was a moratorium. The school building, the Mass School Building Authority, which is a quasi-public agency, opened its doors. They put a moratorium on until 2017, until they really fully vetted everything. It's no longer, you get 150 square feet per student at the elementary, and I think it was 250 at the middle or something like that. They take your educational program and they really understand what all of your needs are, and they do not look at it as one size fits all. And they really do this in-depth analysis for enrollment, and they look at in-migration, out-migration, birth rates, women's fertility, like they look at, and then they also look at the developments that are in town. And it's a much more thoughtful, thorough way of doing it. And so, you know, they actually worked with districts that might have been in the program earlier and architects to really understand what square footage of spaces should be, which would also help make sure that there were buildings were appropriately sized. So you don't just take 150 square feet times 325 students anymore. You have quite a large special ed population, right? They'll accept that. They'll accept all of your RTI and support for your general student population, because they don't want to just cap you at 150 square feet per student. So it's a totally revamped system. And Memorial, we did one, which was the Helmana School in Middleton. It sounds like, was that Vincent Owen? Was also probably one of them that was also at the beginning.
Ambrose.
Oh, Amherst, okay. Ambrose, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Was one of those that were at the very tip that we had to kind of abide by. So Memorial, you were fortunate to get in at the time, but they've taken a harder look at how they approach your needs, which is actually really helpful.
Thank you, Melissa. I just wanted to ask, I seem to remember at the time, Eric, I don't believe that they gave us any adjustment for our lower class size on Memorial. I'm just trying to think back. So that we were kind of inherently starting off from a weaker position in terms of the number of classrooms, because they didn't abide by what the district had for classroom sizes, if I recall correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, and then we were gonna need to redistrict through Melissa, I'm
Yep.
sorry. Martha, we're gonna have to redistrict anyway, because the former Memorial, you forget, was only about 40,000 square feet, and we doubled the size of the, right, the physical size of the school. I think we doubled the size, so we were gonna have to move students around. Begin with, and again, I think the part of the projections, Memorial was a hybrid. It was sort of in between the old SBA and the new MSBA, so it was kind of it's not the same process that we're undergoing now.
Right, yeah, it was in the pipeline or on the waiting list or whatever it was.
I didn't mean to hijack the conversation.
No, but I think it's helpful, PTSD a little bit, right? Like if.
Well,
you're
the reason I
concerned.
raised it is because at the beginning of this discussion, I was very concerned about the MSBA numbers.
Yeah.
And I feel more confident in their numbers now. So that was my main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they feel comfortable enough with their numbers, having gone through it a number of times, that I think upon challenged enough, they would, ask the question back to the district if you're considering MSBA participation, they feel comfortable enough that, short of an agreement on that enrollment with a little bit of wiggle room, getting the Foxhill only enrollment included in the study, that they would say, not a take it or leave it, but, that
but take it over.
But take it.
Or to say it nicer, MSBA program isn't for everyone.
Yeah.
Is their nicer way of saying it, but I think they've done over 200 projects, and so I think their history has really proven that their goal is not to have a school open and already be over capacity. Like that would not be a win for them. So anyway, so a little background on the enrollment. So again, 325 or 640, and MSBA will just say pick one. And obviously we have to have all of the justification, but we will not have to ever go back and talk about enrollment with MSBA again. So again, just a quick summary, we'll be looking at what we want to call option one, 325 student enrollment with 18 general or homerooms, plus all of the support spaces, and we'll get to that in a sec, or option two, which is 640 student enrollment with 36 homerooms, or six per grade. So we have been working with the school department, and I really appreciate everyone's effort. It's been great. Everyone has been available and supportive. And we have looked at what the actual needs are for a 325 student school based on core academic, which includes your ELL, your RTIs, your tutors, your literacy specialists, your math specialists, far more than just general classrooms. Looking at the special ed, you have a large special ed need in the Fox Hill School. A lot of it's the lab program, but you also support your students, which is a great thing. Art and music is pretty prescriptive, but based on 325 students, it would be one generously sized art room, music room with some ensemble spaces. PE would be MSBA participates in a 6,000 square foot gym plus storage and a PE office, but we've been talking that we might want the gym to be a little bit larger because it will fit. A 6,000 square foot gym will support an MIAA basketball court, just with very little runoff, right? So we're looking at if we enlarge the gym just a little bit, what that might look like. MSBA would probably support that. They just wouldn't reimburse you for the additional overage. Media center is very generous, and you will be very pleased with the square footage for that. The dining is your cafetorium, or it's your cafeteria, your stage, and your kitchen, as well as staff dining. These spaces are based upon 2 servings for the student population. So it's quite large. Chances are you're probably not going to have half the population having lunch altogether. Most districts do at least 2 grades per seating, but they allow up to half the population. Your medical and admin support, we've had a lot of conversations about the need for special services in your medical suite. It's wonderful, so we've included those. And then custodial and maintenance requirements, which is your boiler, your mechanical spaces. I shouldn't say boiler, it's all electric. Your mechanical could be an electric boiler. Your mechanical spaces, your receiving, your supply, all of those needs. And there's this other category that it applies to some districts, and right now we're not seeing that need. For Burlington, if there was something that you wanted to include, we would have put it in the other category. MSBA typically allows those, doesn't reimburse, but would allow that in the program. So overall, we still have some tweaking and massaging to do. Yeah.
Miss Monaco on the phone, I think, had her hand up first.
Hi, I know you've kind of gone beyond talking about the enrollment, but I just wanted to get my 2 cents worth in. I guess it's good that so many people feel comfortable with the numbers that SBA has come up with, but I just wanted on record that I do not agree with them. I think that they have probably a good formula that works in many communities, but I don't think Burlington is very typical. And what's happening here is not only do we have huge numbers of apartments with sometimes multiple families living in the apartment units. I can't stop this dinging, sorry about that. And we also have a town that was built at a point in time where the vast majority of homes are now being torn down and rebuilt. And they were small, they were ranches. A lot of them are being torn down, rebuilt into very large houses, and families are buying them and moving in. And it is my opinion that it is very likely that these enrollment numbers will not work in Burlington. And currently we have over 400 kids at Fox Hill. I know SBA believes it's going to go down. I don't believe it is, and I just want to put it out there. I also want to ask about the extra classrooms we talked about asking for at the last meeting. Is there any update on that?
Yep. Thank you, Chris. Yes, in speaking with MSBA, they felt that they have been the number of classrooms based on 18 students is the maximum they would participate in, whether it is on your dime 100% or they support it. So unfortunately, they're saying that they're not looking to overbuild schools and that it is going to be their policy that they're going to mandate that we maintain the 3 or 6 classrooms per grade.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a question about this chart of the page we're on. One column says MSBA standards and one says MSBA guidelines, and I'm wondering what the difference is.
Yep. So Fox Hill at MSBA standards is taking the classrooms or the space sizes per MSBA standards. So, for example, knowing we need 3 classrooms per grade, right, times, so we need 18 classrooms at 950, 950 square foot per classroom, plus all of your support spaces, ELL and your specialists, whatever, that we arrive at 23,270 square feet for core academic. MSBA, and it's a formula that they use, and we're not allowed to touch their column, is they put in 325 students, and their column populates because they say every district is unique. Not every district has the same requirements. Everyone has ELL, but they don't include a lot of those support spaces. So when you look at the guidelines, that's their standard that they fill in 325, it populates their column and says, this is what we think you should get. But we're saying, nope, the educational program and the programs that you have in place really dictate that we need 23,270.
Okay, and if I may, the core academic then includes counselors, social workers, tutors, specialists, EL, special education, not special education. So does it include all those other things that we offer that are not listed in this?
Partially. And what we'll do is we'll share the space summary. It's a really detailed. It includes any program that supports general education, with the exception of guidance, SEL, those fall under admin. they're in there. They just fall under administrative. So there's not a direct educational program associated with those. Adjustment counselors are in special education, right? Because they really work directly with the special education students. But EL, RTI, tutors, specialists, both math and literacy, all of
So
those.
all of our programs are included in one of these categories, even though it doesn't show up specifically.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Thank
we're
you.
happy to share it's a draft right now.
Yeah, that's
We're
okay.
still working on it, but yes. And then you take the same need when you look at the combined Fox Hill of 640 or having two schools sharing the core
Mhm.
facilities, and you'll see there's a slight difference there because there's some redundancies in some of the spaces.
Yes.
But that's how you arrive at it. So, big picture, when we start talking going forward, we think that the gross square footage for a 325 student school is somewhere around 86,000.
Can I pause
Square
you
feet?
for 1
Yes,
second?
someone
I
else
still
got a
have another
hand.
question. Sorry, Mrs. Bond.
I'm sorry, I was trying to, I
It's
guess,
okay.
ask the question or continue the conversation that Chris Monaco had started. I think I've been very verbal about being uncomfortable about the number, and again, I understand that they've been very accommodating to us, but I'm going to ask the question a slightly different way, and it's probably not going to matter, but I want to ask anyway. So it's going to take, this is what, like a 7-year process, right? At least. So if we do start to see what we were talking about, a lot of the homes being torn down and bigger homes being built and more students, and we start to see an increase in the students at Fox Hill and Pine Glen, when we're 2 years out from building, how are we going to, is there any way to reapproach the design to make sure we're not outgrowing the school before we build it? I'm just trying to make sure we have every single, some way to cover ourselves. Is there something possible or no?
So going back to, depending on when, right? Well, in 2 years before the building is built, we're into construction. But as part of the process, MSBA will ask us to demonstrate how an expansion could occur with this building, right? So we will show how this building can be expanded as part of the process. So it's never happened. I guess, I'm not sure if that would be on your dime and all of a sudden we say, oh my goodness, MSBA, the enrollment is just not there. We need to build more if they would participate in it. But I suppose that's something that we could have that conversation with them. Again, I don't think it's happened on their watch per se, other than the Ambrose School, which was the waitlist project, but how that would work.
I want to add one thing too, is that we did get clarification regarding the combination of the schools and the Pine Glen site. And that's one option there, is if we do the combined schools and enrollment suddenly shoots through the roof, we aren't required to close Pine Glen. So I think that's a valid reason in the combined school column, is to kind of hedge against some of the increased enrollment, because then you still preserve that school to absorb that enrollment if the enrollment numbers are not necessarily accurate.
Yeah, I was just gonna follow up on the question about, should things change, would the MSBA reconsider their participation at that point? I don't mean to be a wet blanket, but I would say it would be exceedingly rare or unlikely. Only because the way they outlay their capital funds for their program is it's very kind of regimented how districts come into the program and how they forecast money that's available for future projects. And so they're always trying to forecast out 5, 8, 10 years about what other projects will be coming into the program. And so in their mind, once they agreed to a maximum facilities grant, which is after local funding is approved and after schematic design, and you're into more detailed design, they've already outlaid the maximum that they'll participate in your program. So I would say for them to renegotiate that at that point would be very unlikely. But to Donna's point, if there's members of the community, and to a couple of comments tonight, that there's a really strong feeling that the numbers are just that wrong, really the only option is to withdraw from the MSBA program and kind of do it on your own dime entirely. And so I think, while that's one option, there has been a lot of work done so far to get to the point we're at. And to Donnie, your point about the preferred solution has to accommodate a certain amount of expansion for whatever the reason is. That even though the maximum grant's already been established, if there's a proven way to expand to accommodate the enrollment, should it change beyond what it's forecasted today, that would be an option, albeit on your own dime, but you've also gained the benefit of the maximum facilities grant thus far anyway. So they like to get to a point where their maximum participation is, fairly early on in the process, because they're pretty firm in their investment, so that they can then turn the page to figure out which other projects are coming into their program to also try to forecast with that.
Right.
that
And I was gonna say, I wasn't asking necessarily for them to flip the bill. I was really, you answered that question. If there's room for expansion and the town pays for it, they're not going to shut that down if we need to, correct?
I do not believe so. If that point, if it's proven that there's a really strong need to expand beyond what was part of the solution to begin with, I think they would recognize that, and I don't think they would pull the remaining funds from the program at that point. But I think we would have to have that conversation with them, because that would be a pretty big change, and especially at that point in the project. While we haven't maybe put a shovel in the ground, we have made quite a bit of progress to in terms of fixture counts, capacity, egress. So there's a lot of, maybe Donnie, you can speak to that. That expansion at that point would have to include some of those maybe additional requirements, but.
So we have, for other districts that we're continuing to see a spike in enrollment as well. That we were really thoughtful about the location of the expansion. We thought about how it was going to connect. We made sure that it would be an easy addition to support, so that where it aligns, how does the stair go? Because usually you need an egress stair at the end of a corridor or at the end of a building. So we've been very deliberate and thoughtful about where, and not just lip service to MSBA. Yeah, you could put an addition here. We've been really thoughtful about how we would do that. The cafetorium, at 2 seatings would certainly support that. And the fixture count, if, we're talking 1 additional classroom per grade or 2 additional classrooms per, I guess it would be 1 additional classroom per grade, right? 2 classrooms per floor, something like that. It wouldn't be a very huge addition, but it certainly would hopefully support at least 1 additional classroom per grade, right? That the fixture counts wouldn't.
Yeah, we typically design fixtures so it's not just the minimum, right? Because we like to place them also centrally. So oftentimes if we design the building to have a community wing and then an academic, we usually have a set in both areas. So that should not be ever an issue, because we don't design just minimum. Knowing that, at any given time, you're going to have different numbers of people in the building as well.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of it is code driven too, right? Yeah. So it's not that we think only 18 kids are going to be in a classroom. It's the overall square footage of a floor or a space that we have to meet the building code. So I think from a code perspective, we would be fine. And knowing that it remains to be a concern, that when we think about our options, that we're sure that we can easily add on, should it be necessary, even if it's after the school is built and lived in, that an addition can be added on easily.
Paul.
Just quickly, I think within the past week or so, I got an email on apartment buildings and students. So I will forward the email if John reminds me tomorrow to the committee. But I think the statistics, and I'm not sure what the time frame was, 2,000 new apartments generated approximately 72 students is came from the planning department, so I'd be happy to share that if it gives any perspective on the apartments aspect of the enrollment part discussion.
Standard deviation of the apartments, right? Some years you're gonna have a lot, some years you're gonna have a little. That's the problem. Right? It's the planning with apartments. You know, resident one family is easy. Apartments are more difficult. So with all the fixtures and things like that, are you planning bathrooms and sizing for the maximum kids per classroom? 25 kids?
You're okay for us to.
Yeah.
Respond. Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, Mom.
No. No, so a lot of, so again, building code doesn't necessarily say, you know, how many kids are you gonna have in that classroom, right? You have to say what the occupancy could be, unless we put occupancy limits in the classrooms, which we don't like to do. So, yeah. It's, and as Vivian said, we do it for convenience more than exact numbers. So that's important too, right? We don't want kids to have to walk all the way down the hall, or staff have to walk all the way down the hall.
All right, Jeremy has to go. I just responded to him. Go ahead.
Can I just add one thing about being on projects where the MSBA did participate in certain things like structural steel for a roof that you would potentially put another floor on if you have some of the, you know, a 2 versus a 3, and, you know, for the massing effects, if you had to throw another roof on there, they have participated and have been on where they allowed us but did not participate to stub out what would be 3 classrooms. We had a school that was kind of built into a hill. So in that back part of the first floor, we stubbed out what could be 3 classrooms, eventually was 3 classrooms, but wasn't when we first opened. So that was on, that square footage was on our dime, but there was already going to be foundation there and wall there and everything. It was just stubbing out the electrical and all the utilities to those areas that they didn't participate in, but it was something that in case the enrollment came in over.
All right, done.
Was
Back
there
to-
anyone else that?
No, Jeremy had to explain mistaking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay, I
I'm
answered
sorry.
his question.
All right, so basically what we're looking at when we're still refining these numbers is that for 325 students, we're looking at approximately 86,000 square feet. For, again, economies of scale, if there was a combined school, and we'll get to that in a sec, that's around 143,000 square feet. And if we had 2 independent schools maintaining their own identities with the shared core, which would be the library, the cafetorium or cafeteria, and the gymnasium, it would be approximately 152,000 square feet. So just we're refining those numbers. We'll be finalizing them before we submit to the PDP, to MSBA, but just wanting to get people start thinking about the overall sizes of the buildings, and not tonight, but we will be sharing options as we go forward.
Just because, again, it's kind of abstract for everyone. Memorial Bob is about 85,000 square feet. So have that picture in your head for the 325. And what's 150,000 square foot school?
A little bit bigger than Francis Wyman,
So a little bit,
so
so
smaller than the middle school.
Does that help?
And your current school, 64,000?
60 change, yeah.
64, yeah.
64,000. So if that, I mean, clearly you've been accepted into the program, you need a new school, right? A lot of your spaces do not support this wonderful program that you have. So, but just put it in perspective. So,
Does that include the portables?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And that's 64,000 of a single floor, right? There's no second story on
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right?
so you can, so when you think about if this becomes a multi-story school, how much space you're gonna maximize on the site. Yeah, it's great.
It's like Pine Glen has a smaller footprint, but it has a second story.
Okay, gotcha.
So the other part of it, or in addition to, is the educational program, right? MSBA also wants to understand the district's overall programs and goals at the elementary school level. So part of the educational program will be talking about all the programs that are offered district-wide. And of course, identifying any programs that would be offered within the new, we say in quotes, the Fox Hill School. And right now, there hasn't been any program that isn't currently there that would not be coming over. We have talked about the possibility of maybe the DSC, if this becomes just the Fox Hill School, we can talk about that. And then more importantly, when we start thinking about the building and how the programs or defining where the program should be located within the building and amongst each other is really helpful and important when we start thinking about maximizing time on learning, flexible spaces, making sure we have all of the support spaces in the vicinity of the general classrooms, and start thinking about all of those spatial relationships and adjacencies. And then in the end, as the previous slide identified, that the program really is going to define the space needs, which is the total square footage for the project. So we've started that conversation, and we've really had, well, we did go and visit a school in Springfield, and unfortunately we couldn't open up to everyone. It was MCAS week, and it just would have been too much for the school to manage. But we went out to Springfield to look at a school. It's called the Brightwood Lincoln School. It's two schools, independent identities, sharing cord spaces, 3 classrooms per grade with all of their support. But I just say that because we've been on lots of conversations and visits. We will be visiting another school that's 640 students, but it's a fully 645. That's a fully combined school, but just for feel. But we started working with, as part of the visioning sessions, as well as with some of the educators at Pine Glen. No, that's right. Pine Glen, Fox Hill. I always call it Fox Glen, but Pine Glen and Fox Hill. What was important to them from spatial relationships and adjacencies. How would you envision your building to be organized? So what we're showing here is that your core spaces, such as your gym, your cafetorium with the stage. We've even talked about where might the stage go. Do you want it next to the gym? Do you want it as part of the cafeteria? And even your media center? Where do you see those? And making sure that the community has access to them, so that we can close off the academic wings when the community is able to use the building. And then we started talking about the organization of the grades and the programs to support the grades. And what you'll see here is you'll see some lines, some dashes about the spatial relationships and adjacencies, recognizing that students require different kinds of support, whether it's in the classroom for push-in instruction or small group instruction, or even specialized spaces. So we've started thinking about how we could organize the building. And even some of the specials, art and music and the science, tech, engineering classroom. Do we create a STEM environment or a STEAM environment? And where might that want to be on a multi-story building? And then we also had, we've had a couple of really great working sessions, again, with both Fox Hill and Pine Glen together. And we even mixed them all up, and we've had some great discussions. And what's really nice, and it's a testament to the district, is everyone really is aligned in many, many ways, right? So I didn't know who was who, and you wouldn't know. So everyone really had really good conversations and very much aligned in what they feel that the goals should be organizationally for the building. And I don't know, Vivian, this was talking about just a combined school with 6 classrooms per grade, how that might look, how do we organize the spaces from a vertical collaboration, horizontal collaboration, and what that might look like.
Yeah, so these diagrams were developed based on the space summary that Donna reviewed with all the broad categories, right, for general classrooms, art, music, etc. So we did this exercise.
Maybe
as
go to the next slide.
part of the visioning, where we imagine if you were designing your house and you had all these spaces and you were setting up furniture. Well, in this case, we're designing a school, and we wanted folks to think about how they might envision some of these spaces coming together, being split up, what can be shared, what do we want that's separate. And we did this on a couple of occasions. And what was really interesting is that we split everybody in groups. We had probably a total of 5 groups total on 2 days. And each group came up with something just a little bit different. So it was really great to see that everyone had slightly different ideas about how things can come together. And then at the end of this, at our final session, we came up with yet another way to organize. So it was a great way to see the progression of what folks were thinking about. And this is going to be an ongoing conversation, because as part of this whole programming phase, we really need to have everyone kind of have a consensus as to how this is going to be put together. That's the goal for the for the PSR, to have a final preferred schematic, but the PDP is kind of setting up all the parts and pieces. So those diagrams we put together are really based on all of these parts and pieces that everyone was putting together. The first diagram that Christina brought us to is really what would a 325 student Fox Hill only school look like, and how would that be organized? The spaces are based on MSBA standards for square footages, and the relationships are based on our conversations with educators, the school department, and the space summary really. So then we went on to I think the one previous to this was a combined school, a totally combined 640 student school. That was one of the organizations that came out of this visioning exercise. And then another way to look at it was to split the schools up, similar to the school that we visited in Brightwood, 2 separate schools with separate identities, with a shared core, still under one building. So you can see in the center area here is, we're calling it the community use. It's typically where the gym is, where the cafeteria is. Oftentimes the media center is there. Sometimes the media center is part of the academic area. So these are kind of the nuances that we're going to continue to study, but we wanted to share with you some of the ideas that came out of these exercises. And then there was a hybrid version where the thought was, as 5th graders are gearing up for middle school, it might make sense for them to be part of a larger cohort of 6 classrooms. So if the school in total is still one school, but 2 separate identities, perhaps the 5th graders are combined as one cohort of 6 classrooms. And the next diagram will show how that could work. And in some of these, folks started thinking about this 3-dimensionally, right? So what's going to go on the first floor? What's going to go on the second, third? We know that it's going to be a 3-story school. Just as Donna had said, the existing school is vast, but 64,000 square feet, if you can imagine, cannot absorb this many number of students. And so we're not going to do a single-story school that is, what did we say, 150,000 square feet.
Or even the 86.
Right? Yeah, even 86 is a lot. So I think as we start to think about this, we're going to start thinking that, massing wise, it's going to be a 3-story school. So Some of these kind of make you start to think about, okay, what goes on what floor? But again, this is just the starting point. And then after the hybrid, one of the very last options that came up at our last visioning, and the school principals were there, David and John, is, what happens if we do an upper and a lower grade within one school? And that kind of is a little bit of a school within a school, an upper and a lower. So kindergarten for a second, and I think we had started with that in our group, right? And it was kind of an intriguing idea. So we just wanted to share, this is, the fun part was just kind of pulling out all of these pieces and organizing it.
So I think there are many ways to look at it, and no decisions have been made, and we're just starting the conversation. I think what will be interesting, and just even for flexibility. So at the soonest the building will be on is 2028, right? So the students that are in there today, with the exception of kindergartners, are actually going to be at middle or even high school. So when we start thinking about it, and what was interesting with the staff that were at the last session is they just kept saying, this works today, this is great, but we should be thinking about the future. So it was interesting to start hearing from them that we have an opportunity to do something great, and maybe we should be thinking to the future, because we're at minimum 5 years, right? 2028, but even think beyond. What we can say is that, sure, brick, mortar, 3 stories, all of that, but all of the classrooms, with the exception of kindergarten, are going to be the exact same size. They're going to have the exact same amenities. The support spaces are all going to be flexible. How we organize them, that's soon still to come as we work it through. But even when we were looking at having a lower and upper grade, you could almost accommodate that. And depending on how you layer the cake, but you could change your programs in the future if we think about making sure that we're providing the equity in each classroom and the flexibility. So we're not looking for any decisions. We don't have decisions. This is just the beginning of the conversation, but it was a really great way to get people to start thinking about what a new school could be, whether it's Fox Hill alone or a combined Fox Hill Pine Glen.
And just to frame it through the chair, sometimes people have this idea that flexible means flexible walls, and that's not the case. So I just want to make sure, like, the antithesis to a flexible school would be the current Fox Hill. So the school designed as a snowflake, with open classroom, is very inflexible. That's would be how I would frame this in my head. If you're looking at sort of the antithesis of what we're talking about, think of the current school.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to continuing these conversations, obtaining more feedback. I think the staff, we're going to go back and talk to their colleagues and bring more information back, which will be great. But recognizing, as we start wanting to take this a little bit, everyone's like waiting, like, when are you going to show us the options? Like, they want to start seeing the massing and what this might look like. We are going to start laying out or massing a building about this size, not showing you what's under the hood yet, because we're still working that out. But so we can start talking about some of the options. Not tonight, though, but. Also, as part of this, I'll let Steve chime in as well, but what we have developed is a very draft criteria matrix. And we have found this very beneficial for many districts and communities to identify what's important to you as a community, to identify the criteria of which we will apply to each of the options going forward. I was even hesitant to put all of the options out there, only because I don't want the options to influence the criteria. We really want the criteria to be what your goals are for this project. And so the intent of this is to develop criteria that is important and for the objectives of this project. And then as we start going through the options mandated by MSBA, we have to look at a renovation or repair and add reno, and then the new options, both for 325 students and 640 students. But what we want to do is really understand and get everyone to start thinking about what are your priorities and the criteria and your goals for this project. So a lot of these criteria we have, turn around again, cost. We actually put up equity among all schools because you've completed one. We're talking about two. If it is just one, how might that influence the Pine Glen? But we've also have cost and schedule. We have educational, site, construction, and sustainability and building, I believe. Yeah, operational costs, construction impact, and then the impacts on the community. So what we've done is we've created this criteria from what we're hearing or what we've gleaned from the visioning sessions and listening to you to date. But this really is something that we would ask that you all respond to. So Steve.
Yeah, so I mean, this is just one tool. You know, having gone through and worked with many districts, it's hard to, once you've gone through the process, you understand it better because you've lived it, you've experienced it. So oftentimes it's hard for communities to understand how we get from A to B. How do we get from many options down to one? There's so many different, you know, knobs and levers, cost, size, sustainability, contextual design, parity. So there's many different ways you can kind of rank one option versus the other. And to Donna's point, it's extremely helpful to develop that criteria before we have options because people get emotionally attached for one reason or other. So somebody's reaction to one particular option might be more emotional based on certain factors. So it's helpful to develop that, you know, objectively beforehand. And so this method, you know, working with Danisco, working with other designers has been tried and tested and has worked very successfully. But the key to making it work successfully is making sure the right things are on that page. And that, while we've seen this tool work very successfully, it is highly dependent on making sure the right information is on the page. So we will solicit some feedback from the building committee so we can bake that into the next iteration of this at our next meeting. So we'll be sending that all out for you all to react to, provide feedback for, and provide some parameters so it's a little easier for you all to follow. But this is just really a helpful tool to help us all understand what's the most important, how each of the options can react to those. So happy to answer any questions about how we've used this. Traditionally, if we can keep it pretty high level, we'd prefer not to get so far down in the weeds that we need to rate them. Of course, we're gonna, you know, potentially rank them, but to weight them, I think would be an exercise that would send us down a rabbit hole of, you know, not really sure where we'd come out from. So what we've used very successfully is kind of the consumer reports edition, you know, good, better, best, or negative, neutral, positive. Happy to tailor that to how folks would best respond to. And it's really just an introduction. So I think Donna, you mentioned we're hesitant to put all the options on the top of the page, but it's really starting today with the many options in PDP now that we'll be using this as a tool as we narrow it down to fewer and then ultimately one when we submit the preferred schematic report. So this is a bit of a living document in that if we start to understand that a lot of the options tick all the boxes, we can simplify this and just kind of put them in an appendix or kind of put them below the line that just, or even prerequisites, we know the building's got to meet the educational program. We know it needs to meet the sustainability goals of the town. So it will reach a point where all the options left on the table meet all those criteria. So it's helpful just to put those either behind the line or just note them as a prerequisite and really focus on the ones that are clear differentiators between options. And again, having lived it and having gone through the process, you'll slowly start to see options sort of rise to the top, and that can mean different things for different people. So we're a pretty large group, and you're not alone in that regard. This is one tool that's really helped us get through that process and drive consensus.
And I think, just to reiterate, our goal is we didn't want to really put all the options that we want you to think about it. And don't think about the options and tailor your responses to the options. It's really important. We were trying not to leave the witness, I guess is what we were trying to do, is really get what your goals are and what is important to you as you look and think about these categories. And so when we send out kind of a request to solicit your input, will be, if you don't think there's this criteria on here that really matters to you, that's great. Just tell us, right? We'll be polling the whole committee. If we're missing something, put it in there, right? Just let us know. But a lot of these criteria seem to be relevant to most projects, but we might have too many and we might not have enough in certain categories. So, and you might say you're redundant, take out some, it's fine. We're really, really, truly soliciting your input.
And if, like you said, if there's something that's not on there, or you feel like it could be expressed differently, or you're not really clear how to express it, do the best you can. We'll help decipher and massage that and make sure it's presented in a manner that's with your intent behind it. And if we need to provide a little bit of extra information on if any of these criteria are a little less clear or what might be favorable or unfavorable within that criteria, we can help round that out as well. So, we'll be sending it out, looking for reactions and input. So please do the best you can. We're there to help you.
We're getting one step closer. I promise. We've been hard at work looking at investigating all of the existing conditions. So I think with that.
So yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit about our traffic study. So we had, our traffic engineer was out there March 22nd, just to observe what happens at the school and have a few takeaways. I think the bullets up there are the kind of takeaways from their observations, but just gonna do a quick walkthrough of the arrival procedures that normally happen, at least on the 22nd. It seems like there's about 7 buses that come to Fox Hill, and they come to the front where the canopy is, and they drop off right at the front door there, and staff is at the front door. They only observed actually 2 buses unloading at a time. So even though there's 7, there's really only seems to be 2 or 3 there at once. At arrival. And then for the parents, there's a loop road that goes around the building to the south, and there's a chain that goes across there, but it's open early in the morning so that the cars actually come around to the south and drop off as an east entrance to the school where the staff meets the students. Yeah, right there. So they observed on that day, I think a total of 84 cars, but there weren't 84 at once. They also observed there were about 26 walkers that came to school that morning, and I think 3 bike riders. The loop road is about 1,050 feet, which is approximately enough space for 52 cars. Obviously the staff also come in there and park in the parking lot, usually before school starts. In addition to this, I think at just before school opens at 8:10, they put the chain up there on the ring road so the parents can't use that. So there were people that were late seemed to go into the parking lot to drop their kid off and walk them in, or they would come after the buses had left, come to the front door and then take the kids in that way. So it's kind of the arrival procedures that happen. And then dismissal is a little bit different because there's a chain now across the ring road. So what happens is, I think they open it at around 2:10 or so. They take the chain down. There's a staff member there. The buses come and they're all lined up out front. And so what happens because of the chain there, the cars do tend to queue up on both Fox Hill and Westwood Street. I think at the time there were a total of 17 on one road and 12 on the other. And then there was 3 more cars that were just outside of where the turn onto that ring road is. So I think the main takeaways from this was that there is a little bit of traffic that queues up because of the way the ring road is configured. So that's something we definitely need to consider in our design.
Well, I think to add to that, our traffic engineer said that actually when they opened the gate, the chain, that all the cars picking up fit along the ring road, that there was no spillover. It was really before they opened the gate that the cars were queuing. So that was their observation. So if you, as Neil said, at 1,050 square feet, the ring road accommodates about 52 cars.
Yeah. And just,
I have a question on the phone.
sure.
You can,
Oh, sure.
Ms. Monica. Christine? You have your hand up?
Yes, I wanted to double check on the number of buses that service Fox Hill School on a daily basis, on a regular daily basis.
7.
7
Um,
seconds. Correct.
is-
Yep, 7.
Yeah.
So can we ask Bob, is that what we're used to having? What about vans, special ed buses, et cetera?
So there's 4 vans that come, they in the morning, they use the ring road and they drop off at, one of them drops off right at the lab program modulars. There's a ramp there. And then the other 3 drop off where the parents drop their kids off. And then in the afternoon, I think the lab releases a little bit early. So they, because the chain is still there, they actually pick up right in front of the building. All 4 of them.
All right, thanks.
Sure. So I just have a few more observations. There were actually a lot of walkers on after school. There were 42 walkers after school, and again, the 3 kids on their bikes. And this is in March, so I assume in the nicer weather, there'll probably be more kids on bikes and walking
Next week.
next week.
And some lesson.
And then there were a few like deficiencies they noticed. I think some of the crosswalks are not accessible. They didn't have warning strips, where the curb cuts are.
We're working on some grant money right now.
Okay.
Some improvements, yeah.
And then some of the signage wasn't to the manual of uniform traffic.
Come
control
back in June,
devices.
yeah.
Working on that as well.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
just observation.
Yeah, yeah.
No judgments.
No, we know, that's all I'm saying.
Now, I have a question about the morning drop off. Typically, when I've done it, they have us pull up to the
Yeah, I
front
think-
there and the kids walk across the front and go in the main entrance, not through
That's
that
not a
side
big deal.
entrance.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, we
Yeah.
moved it back.
They moved it again
We moved it back because we can get more kids
on the
on
way
the
there.
recess doors
Okay,
coming in.
So this
That's
is
been a while.
accurate
That's
now?
so that's accurate.
Okay, I was gonna say, I don't
We-
drop off
We
either.
started to do it when it was really raining
Yeah.
and we couldn't get it was just bogging down traffic because we were not letting as many kids out.
Yep.
So with that playground entrance, you
Mhm.
can safely let more children out
Okay.
versus up at the front because parents weren't pulling all the way up.
Okay.
They were just pulling right up to the sidewalk, letting one out, so it wasn't efficient. So I
Okay.
think we pulled it back.
Okay.
Look at you being efficient.
So the east door is
Yep, you're
Okay.
accurate, but
All
Jen
right.
and I don't drop off very much. Yep.
David, I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
that's still, that's what we had decided to kind of.
So this is obviously not gonna be the final configuration, right? But I think it's just helpful when we hear, it's helpful to gauge, is this a community that really walks to the school? Do they get dropped off by car, by bus? What the afternoon is, we find in most communities, the drop off in the morning isn't as much of a congestion. People are just coming, dropping and going. It's the afternoon where parents come early, waiting to pick up their child because they have to run to the next event or whatever. So, but it's really very informative for us to understand the behaviors of the students and the families at Fox Hill and what we need to do to improve the conditions as we look at a new school.
Yeah.
And that's really what this is all about, is informing us of the patterns now. And of course, it will be modified based upon the enrollment projections we're using, but recognizing we won't have a gate that goes up but all of that's really helpful as we think about the future and how people behave or arrive and depart. And we have our was there someone else?
Yep. Ms. Bond?
Yeah, so I'm guessing, when you just said you're looking at the total numbers, I'm assuming that you're accounting for the combined school, how much additional traffic will be coming down both of those roads. And, are you going to go observe Pine Glen also to get kind of averages in terms of how many parents are driving versus walking versus biking, and going to put that into the formula?
Yeah, well, yes, we can obtain that information. So yes, we'll be looking at Fox Hill for 325 and for a combined for 640 students. We can obtain the information from Pine Glen, but because they're not traveling to Pine Glen anymore, our traffic engineers will have to take a look at, how would they come? Would it be by bus? And that's going to be a conversation to be had, like with Bob and his team as well. But we will not just make certain assumptions. We'll have to obtain more information on that.
Thank you.
Sure. And to that point, our traffic engineers.
They're doing a more detailed study of the intersections at Fox Hill and Westwood, as well as Wilmington and Westwood.
And they'll be out next week.
They'll be doing it next week, yeah.
So they put the strips out on the roads and actually do road counts, car counts going over the roads, which will be really helpful as well. It will be in May, so, well, it could be raining, but, if the weather's nice, but we have the data from March and then, doing the counts. So let's just make sure we don't do you guys have a walk to school day? Monday. Can we make sure that we don't do?
Yeah,
it
I'll make
on
sure
Monday? Yeah, but that would be helpful too, is to get really accurate counts of the traffic that goes through the neighborhoods. We've identified two intersections.
Yeah, 2 intersections.
To count cars, which will be really helpful. Again, not just for the combined school, right? It's also if we just look at Fox Hill for the smaller enrollment. But then what they'll be able to do based on that and the data that they get from the town, whether it's accidents and everything else, they do a lot of research, and then they will grade what those intersections are. And I think I had said it earlier, A through F, like they give F sometimes, but so that we can understand how congested they really are or how not congested, and then what our proposed solutions would do to improve the traffic flow or not at those intersections. So it's really a great tool to understand how we're going to improve the traffic in the area.
Bob, do you have a question? You're pointing out?
No, 2 things. I just wanted to add that we also do have a study from Safe Routes to School where they study
They
the
have that.
traffic.
Yep.
So just for everyone who's listening or
Yep,
people at
sure.
home that, and then I did want to comment that somebody has their hand raised online. So
Sure.
Patrick.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh.
Yes.
This is Nicole Niedermeyer. I'm sorry, I'm using my husband's computer. I just wanted to ask, when you do this traffic study, if you could please, well, a little background is I walked my kids to Fox Hill School for the past think 7 or 8 years every day. And the intersections with Vincent in Fox Hill and Sumner in Fox Hill, multiple times I've had to run in the street and move kids from getting hit because it's not a four-way stop. It's actually with all of the traffic and all of the children at once, drivers have a very hard time almost like focusing on where they're supposed to go, and the kids just walk in the street. And I mean, that's 7 years of worth of data that I can tell you firsthand. So if you could please look at those intersections as well. I think it would be eye-opening. And if you could do it on a nice day when more kids walk, like that's usually the nice weather. It's like the kids, I don't know what happens. They just go nuts. So it'd be great if someone could include that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have the data in front of me. Paul, I don't know. There, we have the town sidewalk plan, right? And I think Vincent is on there before 2028. Does anyone have that or know it off the top of their head?
I don't have it on the top
Okay,
of my head, but I
okay.
do remember the select board did discuss
Okay,
prioritizing that
yeah.
one, so we can check on that tomorrow and get that to the committee.
Yeah.
When did Fox Hill get a sidewalk?
The Fox Hill Road.
Yeah.
That's for a long time.
Longer years ago.
Some of them are being like redone.
Okay.
Like Terrace Hall Ave, they all did all those this past year by Francis Wyman. But I had conversations. I had conversations as part of the Safe Routes to School grant. We got the small grant, but there's $2 to $3 million grants. And we were trying to line up getting a grant for Fox Hill at the same time that we had planned to do the Vincent Donald sidewalks. But so I know that they're in the next, they're scheduled in the next few years. So
Yeah, Donald's on the schedule.
yeah,
soon, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, we can look at, there may be issues with the way the stop signs are as well.
Mhm.
Might help to have another set of stop signs. Four-way stop or something.
I think, are there any other hands? Is there?
No.
No other hands.
Okay.
Just if can't some.
And I think
We have one more.
We have one more slide in. So this is the survey update. So we've had our environmental scientists out there looking at the wetlands and flagging them. And they've reached out to the conservation commissions of both Wilmington and Burlington. So it looks like they will have to file an ANRAD with both towns, likely. And they're gonna
so just to confirm, if these crazy environmental
Yeah.
abbreviations,
abbreviated notification.
resource area
Resource area
delineation.
delineation.
Makes no sense, right? Yeah.
Just can't think of it, doesn't make
So,
sense.
yeah, just to confirm what this is working with both conservation commissions and both towns, just to make sure that everyone is in agreement that the wetlands, as we understand them, is how they interpret and agree with, so that we can then use those and the associated buffers.
Yeah, and I think Wilmington has similar buffers to Burlington, so as long as they agree to the delineation of the wetlands, we should be in good shape. So we have a few little tweaks to this. We noticed, or at least our environmental engineer noticed, that one of the wetlands is actually part of it is the storm structure. So they're going to reduce that little tail on the wetland to the far left. So that's not really a wetland, it's actually a drainage.
Top left.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So really the big issue to take away here is the vernal pool is the kind of elephant in the room. It has a 200-foot buffer, which is quite large, and it's unlikely to be able to build anything in that. Like a building for sure, and possibly not even impermeable paving, like a playground may not be able to be put there. So we're looking at that. We're taking a conservative approach, and we'll try to keep everything out of there if we can, but it may not be possible. Because as you can see, it's the farthest ring around the vernal pool, and that's not too far from the existing Fox Hill School.
So we'll be having probably some preliminary conversations before we submit the ANRAD, just to introduce ourselves and understand. Part of it is that some of it's mowed, right?
Yeah.
Some of it's already used and
Disturbed,
mowed or
yeah.
disturbed. So we're hoping that, there'll be some leniency because it's currently disturbed, not saying we can build, or there may be restrictions on how we use it, but because it's not preserved right now, that might be a little bit in our favor. But we're also looking at the other areas of the site, just so everyone knows that we're not just solely focused on one end of the site.
Yeah.
And recognizing the school will remain remain occupied during construction. You know, we have to be strategic about the final location of your new school. We also want to also be mindful of traffic and how we can improve upon your current situation. But also, once your snowflake melts, then we can, you know, take advantage of that area for whether it's parking and or play
Vehicles or
spaces.
Yeah.
Yes. So again, looking long-term and not just during construction.
I think that's all.
I think
all we
that
have for
is
the
all
survey
we have.
update.
I keep thinking you're driving, you're not. Is that
No.
my?
I am, but Bob is also like.
Oh, yeah.
She's
I'm
doing the
zooming in when
presentation,
you
he's driving the web.
Sorry.
It's all good. All right, so we just wanted to go over just upcoming milestones and dates for meetings that are on our radar. We're going to be meeting with the executive working group tomorrow and on 5/17. And we'll also be meeting with the communications working group on Thursday, 5/4. We have scheduled our community meeting on May 18th. I know that that was distributed to all the different people within the town itself, and we did obtain the abutter addresses from the assessor's office, and so we'll be mailing those out tomorrow to the local abutters. We tentatively have planned on May 16th, school building committee / school committee meeting. And that would be to review the educational program and space summary. Based off of our discussion tomorrow with the executive working group meeting, that might be something that is on May 23rd versus May 16th. We'll confirm that once we discuss with the group, and we'll make sure we update the building committee on the meeting dates, so that way they're in your calendars. And then our final meeting prior to PDP submission and approvals on May 30th. So that's the day that we're asking for approval of the PDP for MSBA submission.
All right.
I sent you an email earlier, the community meeting on May 18th. There's a planning board meeting that night. And I think Ms. Rappaport said there are some planning board members who are interested in participating. So she suggested we reschedule, but if the planning is too far along, is it possible that we have schedule another one?
Yeah, so this will be recorded. And I think we're open to taking questions ahead of time. And it will not be the only opportunity for public participation.
Okay, so I just forwarded her email to you, and if you could communicate that would be great.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because we have to go through the planning board.
Yeah, and we would typically do that.
They'll get their own
Yes,
presentation.
they will.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if you
I know
could
Brenda's
connect-
a parent too.
If
Yeah.
you could connect, that would be great.
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw it.
And then again, just after our conversation tomorrow, the PDP may go, a little bit further into June. And so we may need another meeting. That the PDP is not driven by any board votes, MSBA board votes. It really is just a staff review. So we just want to make sure that we have the educational program fully understood and the space summaries also fully understood before we submit it. So we may need a couple more weeks on that, but we won't be missing any deadlines.
And we'll make sure we get meeting invites out based off of that conversation tomorrow. So everyone has it on their calendars. As far as other topics, not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance. So we did actually get a new member to the SBC, Jeremy Brooks, and that is in the replacement of Carl Foss. And so we were looking to get a motion on the change of SBC member, so that way we can update the MSBA member form and get it over to our project coordinator for approval.
I'd like to move that we add Jeremy Brooks to the school building committee in replacement of Carl Foss. Is that
As
the
a
right?
voting member.
As a voting member in replacement of Carl Foss as a member of the school building committee.
Second.
All right, Mrs. Bond, still got you? Yeah.
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco,
Aye.
Ms. Simon,
Aye.
Dr. Conti,
Aye.
Mrs. Kasha,
Aye.
Mr. Cuna,
Aye.
Mrs. Sagarino,
Yes.
Mr. Denizio,
Yes.
Mr. Rosenblatt.
Aye.
Feels later than it is. Mr. Villanos,
Yes.
Ms. Priest,
Yes.
I'm a yes. And I've been calculating incorrectly, but that's 12-0-0 to go back and edit the, because he voted earlier. It's my bad.
That's okay. We'll make sure Aiden has
Okay.
it in the minutes.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, next meetings again, we just went over it, but just putting it on the screen. We'll update you following our meeting tomorrow, and we'll make sure we get the correct invites out to the full committee. And then just a motion to adjourn.
Actually, can I ask a question about the, when you were specifying that we might have a meeting on the 23rd of May, which is when we normally have, when we have a regularly scheduled school committee meeting,
Correct.
is this, I'm sorry.
They want a joint.
Yeah, they want to join. I'm sorry. So the 16th, do we need to post a school committee meeting for the night of the 16th?
That's to be determined.
Okay, so if it's moved to the 23rd, then we won't need to do that. But if it is on the 16th, we will need to do that.
Yeah, that's what, we just
Okay.
need to talk with the executive working group tomorrow as far
Okay.
as approval process between the different parameters of the PDP, and then kind of making sure that we have the development that we need in order to support the review of the final educational program and space summary with the committee. So again, TBD, and so we'll have that discussion tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? That's it. Okay.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Neil,
I don't know, George. Sure.
you can't build this is the line that.
Yeah, that's the line. Well, we may be able to do like playgrounds, but I'm
Okay.
not sure, because right now this is all like a baseball field. It's like
Oh, yeah,
grass,
yeah,
so a lot
okay.
of Dirt.
Okay.
They really can't do anything with it. They call this the resource fund.
Okay, the dotted one. The dark. Okay. Okay.
Looks like
But from there to 280.
One can.
Building.
Not committed, right?